Well, it's just like when you go in and you're about to do a lot of changes, and the person that tells you they don't have a problem with change, they're going to be the problem with change. Right? Same thing.
I don't have a problem as long as you change other people's stuff.
Help me with hip-hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patience. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip-hop. Let's get it right.
Donna, you know how, some things in life have a finish line? And you're just running, trying to meet the goal, cross the finish line, and you're done. Well, cybersecurity ain't that. There's no finish line with cybersecurity. It's like, it's not even a marathon, because even a marathon has an end. Like, it's not that. It's forever. And recently, OCR released a newsletter, January 2026 OCR Cybersecurity newsletter. And they talked about some things about system hardening and protecting EPHI. And we're going to cover that today because it's very important to listen to what OCR puts in these newsletters, because oftentimes, let's just say it could be their way of saying, this is what we're seeing, folks. Stop screwing up.
Yeah, they tell you.
Yeah. Well, in all seriousness, people ask often, like, I don't understand what OCR is looking for. I don't know how to make my practice HIPAA compliant. What specifically are they looking for? Well, their guidance tells you that. Their investigations tell you that. Their newsletters tell you that. And that's why it's important to cover these.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is people, A, don't even know these exist, so there's a lot of that goes on. B, even if they do try to read it, it just kind of goes over their head. Or C, they try to hit the high points because this is something I can just read the bullets and go do. And none of that helps.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll add a D to that, and the D is I ain't got time for that. So they read it, they understand it, they know they're supposed to do it. They're like, I don't have time.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, do you remember the old commercial? I haven't got time for the pain.
With the migraine
I don't have time for the headache.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have time for that. And it's, you know what? Nobody has time for cybersecurity, but you also don't have time for a data breach or an investigation or any of the other things that come out of that. It's not about time. It's about priority.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right, David.
Indeed, I think so as well. So with that said, let's dive into the 3 core hardening actions that OCR highlights.
Well, and they broke it down really well. And one of the things, really, we'll hit on what they are because I think we talk enough about how to do these things. It's the message that I picked up from reading it that I thought it's like those key points. If you pay attention to every word that's used and you know that there's lawyers involved, every word matters. And so there were a few things that I picked up on and kind of scattered them throughout our discussion. But hardening actions that they highlighted in this thing. So first of all, hardening a machine, makes it tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Rock hard muscles, right, David?
Yeah, hard to break into, hard to breach.
Yeah.
Some people would say hard to use, but
there is that.
And there's multiple levels to it as well. We talk about hardening a PC, for example. It's all about what software is there. So you have the operating system hardening, you have the individual software, you may even have cloud applications. So it's, it kind of, the tentacles go everywhere with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tentacles is a good way to put it because it's when they brought up patching, that's something we talk about all the time. Software that's outdated, that's just low-hanging fruit because they just scan for those vulnerabilities and then they know exactly how to use them against you. So I noticed in their discussions of the patching, they pointed out some things that I don't know that I've seen it organized this way. Maybe that's all it is. But one of the things that I noted was they specifically said operating systems and then listed Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, Linux, all of them.
Mm.
So they're not just talking about making sure your Windows computers are patched. It's also the Mac OS, also your Android, your mobile devices, all of those servers, everything needs to be patched.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time. And that's another area of, you're not tracking all the mobile devices in your client's sites. So what happens?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think too, this points to what people understand as far as the terminology, because I run into this often where I could ask a client or a user at a client site. I say, for example, what operating system are you using? And it's not uncommon for somebody to say, I don't understand what you're asking me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And they may not, call it, putting two and two together. So there's a lot of reasons that noting that they are pointing that out is either they recognize the same thing you do, or they're trying to make sure that you don't think it's just certain computers. Right.
Yep. So we're going to read what's on the line, between the lines, and underlined all at the same time.
Inside the O's. And
That's right. So just assume it's all of it. All means all, right?
Yeah. It says everything. And they even go so far as to point that out, that it applies to operating systems, but then they brought up EHRs, email software, and firmware on routers and firewalls.
Yeah, that's a tougher one for sure.
But they bring it up, and so many times we're told, oh, you don't have to do that. You don't need to do that. You do that once a year.
Yeah. How many stories have you seen, though, where people everything seems good on the inside, but the bad guys got in because the router had firmware on it that hasn't been updated in 5 years or something like that. It happens frequently because it's one of those kind of out of sight, out of mind things. Mm-hmm. You don't have something popping up on your computer that says, update your router firewall. And there's no warning. And almost every client that we take over has a firewall that's grossly outdated or never patched. We had one recently we brought in that they had a sonic wall, which is like, great, you've got a decent, at least you're not running something you got from, off the shelf at Best Buy, but they're running that. And I said, well, do you have a subscription on there? Oh yeah, we got a 5-year subscription on it. And I'm like, wow, that's not normal. So they should be good to go. Go in and look at it. Yeah, they have the subscription, but nobody's patching it. So, okay, you've got part of it happening. You have the paperwork right, but nobody's doing the actual work to keep it updated.
Oh, and we see that happens with backups and all kinds of things that people just assume run in the background. But if you're not making sure it's running in the background and running properly, it's probably not running in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is true. And of course, as you like to point out, the conversation was, we're pretty good on the firewall thing. We've got a warranty on it and everything. We're good. That's always the first place I start. When somebody tells me they're good, it's like, let's start there. Because if this ain't right and you think it's right, then everything else is going to be worse.
Yeah. Well, it's just like when you go in and you're about to do a lot of changes, and the person that tells you they don't have a problem with change, they're going to be the problem with change. Right? Same thing.
I don't have a problem as long as you change other people's stuff.
Yeah. So here's where they bring up that sometimes you can't patch things because there's not a patch yet. And they point out you don't get a pass because there's not a patch. And so often it's, well, we couldn't patch it because we didn't have one. Well, that doesn't mean you get to, even if you can't patch it right away or there's not a patch, you have to do something else to make sure that vulnerability is mitigated. And they make a point of saying, you need to use some other method if you don't have that patch. And then they go on to say, those are the kinds of things that you should have in your risk analysis and risk management requirements. And then they say, thus a system hardening process would include regular identification, and then in parentheses, through the risk analysis process, and mitigation, parentheses, through the risk management process of identified vulnerabilities.
So you mean to tell me that the risk analysis process is also ongoing?
Yeah. It was kind of interesting. And I did make note, they mentioned in this one, it's not a big memo. It's not really long. Those newsletters aren't usually, they might go to 2 pages if you printed it. They mentioned risk analysis 5 times and risk management 6 times.
Okay.
And then the other theme throughout the whole thing was patching vulnerabilities is not a one-time event. And and they brought it up over and over in different ways. They were saying, you don't do this stuff one time and you're done. And every time it was said a little differently, but it was said over and over and over throughout the entire thing that this has to be something that's ongoing and that you have to continually deal with it. So that theme was in there as well. And tying that to the risk analysis and risk management, and then mentioning those are required elements under HIPAA, that's about as close as you can get to them telling you, look what we're expected to see.
Yeah. I'm glad that people are getting kind of away from mentioning vulnerabilities like a vulnerability scan. And we're starting to see people talk more about vulnerability management, because I can't stand when somebody's like, hey, I want a vulnerability scan or a vulnerability assessment even. I'm like, for what? I mean, if you're not going to mitigate it and then do another scan and keep this going on, and even if you do, you're only fixing the problems that were there that one day. And if you know anything about vulnerabilities, they're constant. Like our vulnerability reports never show 100% patched, because there's always things out there that haven't yet been patched.
Yeah, so you've always got to be aware that that's happening. And I'll run a vulnerability scan every year. Okay?
Yeah.
No. At least monthly. Come on. That then you might be getting somewhere with it. And as you mentioned, taking care of them when you see them, going through and identifying, are these things that I can actually load and fix? Or are these things that are open and I need to be aware of? And I've had tech teams say, well, that's just a lot of little vulnerabilities. I don't need to get rid of that list. Only the ones that matter is the ones I need. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we do handle them differently. So, certain patches and vulnerabilities happen, and we may say, all right, this is going to be on a monthly cadence. This is going to be on a weekly cadence. And then these are going to be like ASAP, as soon as we can patch them.
Right.
But you got to have something out there, and it certainly can't be, like you mentioned, it can't be an annual vulnerability scan and remediation. To me, that's not even, you're just wasting your time and money, honestly.
Or you do the vulnerability scan and then you do the follow-up one, and it still has a lot of the same things on it. Yes, it should have things on it, but if you're only going to do this periodically instead of like you do, where it's monthly, weekly, immediately, there's a cycle, a plan. And if you're only looking at vulnerabilities once or twice a year, at least when you do the scan, deal with all of them then. Make a plan and get them done, because if you're only going to do it now, at least start with a clean slate, unless it's just impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. With vulnerability management, like for example, we do scans every day. Then we have to categorize and score things and all that. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So once we scan it and decide to remediate it, then you have to go back and scan again to make sure it's remediated. And then of course, every so often a patch breaks something and you're like, okay, now we can't patch it, or we have to roll back the patch. We understand the vulnerability is still there. Now we've got to mitigate it some other way. Just patching in and of itself is a full-time job. I don't think people fully appreciate how good patching, how time consuming it is. And for what your MSP's probably charging you, you're getting a deal.
Yeah, if it's done correctly over a lot of machines, it is not a simple task. And it's, the configurations and the firmware on the devices, and there is firmware on your computers, by the by, for those of you.
Yeah.
But it's a good solid point that patching is the key, because the number of times that you have a big data breach and it's because a patch wasn't in place or a mitigation wasn't in place, one or the other. And it's the, the low-hanging fruit. It really is. So
yeah. Well, let's move on to something I think is a little easier, and that's removing or disabling unneeded software, accounts, and services. And now this should be the low-hanging fruit. This should be easy, but it seems to be a little difficult to do and keep track of, particularly in the age of remote work.
Yes.
Because people often, I don't know, they have this viewpoint sometimes that, well, if I'm working from home, I can use that computer for home stuff. And little Johnny can play his games on it too if he wants to. I'm not using it. Sometimes it ain't little Johnny, sometimes it's big Johnny. But the number of times that we block the attempted installation of video games on work computers, it would probably shock most people. It's pretty consistent.
That would be a statistic you ought to track down for us at some point. Just for yours, just your, we're not saying across like but just to know, because it is. And it's not just the games. It's, so-and-so says I need to load this. And I went to this website and it tells me I need to load this.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, this is where shadow IT comes in. Hey, I know that I can do this thing I'm trying to do by using this app. And the app itself may be fine. It's just not something that's approved by the company for use. And now all of a sudden you thought all of your data is over here and, going from point A to point B. You didn't realize that point C had been introduced, and now your data is creeping outside of your organization.
Hence the name data leak.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it is a process. We talk about it. I think we even did an episode a long time ago about digital spring cleaning. And, I try to do it around the beginning, a couple of times throughout the year. And as I'm writing this, I'm due for another one, because there's always stuff, especially us. We'll load things because we're testing something, trying to figure something out. We do use it for a little while, and then we're like, yeah, that's not working for me, and we stop using it. I'll go delete it later. We get the third-party scans and vulnerability management, but at the same time, if you don't need it, don't have it on there.
Yeah, get rid of it. I've got things that I use. I just don't use them enough to keep it installed. And yes, I know it's a little bit of a hassle, but if I'm going to only use it twice a year, I'll just reinstall it twice a year. It just makes more sense than having a piece of software out there that could be vulnerable, because every piece of software can come with vulnerabilities and probably do come with vulnerabilities. So why increase your risk by having things out there you don't need?
Yeah, it's kind of like, if I don't need a door there, I'm not going to use a door there. It's the same kind of thing. Why put the door? Because it is a back door, and it could be standing wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate that not only is there software, but there's usually in business software, especially, accounts that get set up and services that get turned on to go with these applications. And then you end up with all of these accounts out there that you don't need. And then they could be used as a vulnerability, to launch something. And I know you're a particular fan of how accounts get left out from 3 different IT companies back, and nobody's gotten rid of the logins yet or changed the passwords. And then, these services that get launched, and it was because the old EHR required it. And oh, by the way, it's logging in as admin.
Yeah. All those things are problematic. And I mean, somebody in the organization has to be in control or over these things, because your vendors, if you change vendors, you go to another IT company or whatever the case might be, you're assuming this new IT company is going to come in and try to figure all these things out. But if you've got playbooks internally, you've got somebody who's accountable for these things internally, then you can make sure they're being done.
So somewhere, somebody has got to know this. And again, it's not something you do, once and then you're done, because it has to be ongoing. You have to do it all the time. At least regularly, make sure you do that kind of spring cleaning. If nothing else, do it. Think of it as spring cleaning. But I try to think of it as, quarterly kind of stuff. At the beginning of each quarter, go out there and run through the list. But that's me and you, which is a little different than other people. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a lot different. All right. Let's go to the next one here. Enabling and configuring security features. Now, this was an interesting one, because how many people do you know that would be out there doing this? You would hope that your IT person, your MSP, internal IT, whatever, somebody else is doing this.
Somebody somewhere.
Yeah. At least that's your hope.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you get into things like multi-factor and audit logs and what happens with them and how are your security features set up. Oh, yeah, well, we have such and such security software. Well, how's it configured? What is it looking for? What is it doing? What features do you have turned on? Ask IT. So,
yeah,
it is.
Again, this is where it gets into assumptions, because we see that. We were called in not too long ago on a business email compromise, and one of the first questions we asked was about multi-factor authentication. Like, do you have MFA turned on all your accounts? And the CEO of the company was like, yeah, we absolutely have that turned on. And I'm like, great, let's go look and see. And come to find out, it was turned on for a few people, but the internal IT person did not have it turned on for themselves because they didn't want to be bothered with it.
Oh,
so
ouch.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation to navigate, because, he was the one that was in charge of turning it on for everybody, but he decided he didn't need it.
Because back to the overconfidence thing, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And by the way, his account was one of the ones that got breached. So
Of course.
just saying.
But when they were in that whole discussion about enabling and configuring security services, here again is where they bring up, they brought up other newsletters that they had done, encouraging you to go back and look at them, which, good idea if you haven't looked at it. And it said, for example, a regulated entity's risk analysis may determine that multi-factor authentication is required to sufficiently reduce the risk of unauthorized access to certain systems, but it is not available as included authentication option for the target operating system or software, thus requiring installation and configuration of third-party multi-factor authentication solution. That is one sentence.
Okay.
But it does bring up risk analysis. It is scattered throughout there, and it points out that they did a cybersecurity authentication newsletter a while back, and you should go look at it for additional authentication examples and more detailed information.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we'll provide a link to that in the show notes so you can find it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in their newsletter.
So let's jump into some tips for listeners, or practical tips for listeners. So we're going to leave you with a little bit of a homework assignment, right? You know, we always want to give you something you can take away and actually go do. So the first thing we'll start with is just an asset inventory, right?
If you don't know what you have, how can you protect it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. And no, people don't like this.
Yeah, make sure you're looking at the hardware and the software assets, because they're different. So take a look at that. And you can also compare your asset inventory to maybe that vulnerability scan, so that maybe it's finding assets on your network that are not in your inventory, and you need to ask questions as to why. What is this? Where is it? And why is it?
Yeah, and the other thing that you see a lot is when you're doing your inventories, and we have ours spread out on purpose. We have the inventory for SaaS applications, for your cloud applications, if you will, the inventory for your local applications, the inventory for your computers and tablets and phones, etc., and then the inventory for your infrastructure equipment. And people were like, why don't we just put that with the computer systems? Well, you know what? We said include that on there before, and it just never made it to the list. So we had to make a separate one. Plus, there's a lot of times where there's one separate company that's doing the infrastructure stuff, that's another company's managing the individual devices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody's pointing fingers when something happens.
Yeah, so you got to know who's managing who's zooming who. And
yeah.
So if you're not paying attention to what you have and where it's going and what's happening with it and who's managing it, then it's not happening at all. And the inventories, I know they're a PITA. They are. But they are absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary.
Yep. All right. The next one is to subscribe to vulnerability alerts from vendors and NIST/CISA resources.
So I don't know. I don't tell most people, unless you know what to do with these things, don't bother doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think you need to have somebody who's doing this for you. You know, what is IT doing? And are they monitoring these things for you? And particularly, what are they not monitoring when you start talking about this kind of stuff? Because a lot of the alerts we get, I'm looking at them, I'm like, that's great or terrible that there's this big Cisco vulnerability, but none of my clients are running Cisco equipment. So I'm not going to go and tell my clients about this. It's not for them. Mm-hmm. Part of my job is to cut out the noise.
Right.
And so we're looking at the noise of what all these companies put out, because the companies they don't know who's noise to what. They put it all out there. Then we filter it down and then deliver it to clients as needed.
Yeah, we try to do that, in the Cardin Club, for club members. And, we don't do it all the time. We do it when we see something we think is important and could be in several locations, across the board. Mm-hmm. And when we do it, we try anyway to publish it and say, this is really important. Make sure somebody's looking into it. Or sometimes we even tell them, this is what you should go ask IT. Say it this way. And it's because we know somebody may not be doing that for you. Now, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to do all of them. It's if I spot some that I am paying attention to that I think are high priority and want to make sure, then we go ahead and post it out there in the forums. Hey, we don't do a lot out there. We don't have noise. So when we push something out, it's for a reason.
Right. Yeah. And if you know what your assets are, back to your inventory, if you know what your assets are, then you know what vulnerabilities to look for when it comes to these alerts.
That's right. If you don't know where the software is, do we even use that? Or even better, no, we don't use that, and it's on 100 computers.
Yeah.
That's the one that's really painful. But that's why you want to do the regular housekeeping session, the cleaning, digital spring cleaning, if you will. Get rid of the stuff.
Yep. Yeah, just get rid of it. And there's always things hanging around. So don't think there's nothing there. There's always things there. Just figure out what it is, get rid of it. And probably one of the worst offenders I see oftentimes that scares me is when you have the remote access tools that are left over from other vendors. Maybe your copier person needed access or some other vendor needed access for one session, but then you left it on there because they're not going to uninstall it. And then all of a sudden you've got these programs on there that could be used to remotely access your computer.
Yeah, I would love to see any vendor that has to get somebody to install something like that, unless it's, hey, we're going to work regularly and need it. I would love to see them in the call with automatically sending them instructions on how to remove it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, some of them can be used on a one-time use basis. So they run, they don't install, they run to give them access. So the program's never actually installed on the computer. That's ideally what you want to do. And that's what we do when we have a one-off type situation like that. But most companies aren't doing that. They're using other things that kind of could give you even what's called unattended access. And that's definitely not what you want.
No, not unless you intend for it to be unintended and you know what's going to happen with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we don't see this quite as much anymore, but every so often we'll get somebody who's a little tech savvy and they'll say something like, hey, I want to connect to my own systems from home, which by the way, we give people access to do, but I want to use VNC or something like that. And I'm like, oh Lord. There's problems with that. I mean, it's not a problem with VNC. It's more of a problem with users, but it's, we want them to go through something that's more authenticated access and more secure access than that. So you just have to be careful. Again, it goes back to people know that there are technologies out there that give them the ability to do what they want to do. And if you just tell them no, they're going to find a way around it. So you have to figure out how to solve the problem that they're having.
Again, that is their point. IT can no longer be the Department of No.
Unfortunately.
We're both sitting here nodding on a podcast.
Y'all see that? I'm sure you can hear it. Chicka, 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 chicka.
That goes back to why people are like, we want you to be on video. You just don't know how much trouble we cause. So I think we can wrap it up with their concluding paragraph had some very specific points that I think is sending the message we should all heed.
Yep. So system hardening and security baselines can be an effective means to enhance security and for regulated entities to protect EPHI. However, defining, creating, and applying system hardening techniques is not a one and done exercise. Evaluating the ongoing effectiveness of implemented security measures is important to ensure such measures remain effective over time. As new threats and vulnerabilities evolve and are discovered, and attacks vary and improve their tactics, techniques, and procedures, that's called TTP, by the way, regulated entities need to remain vigilant to ensure that their implemented security solutions remain effective. Indeed, for regulated entities, the periodic review and modification as needed of security measures implemented under the HIPAA security rule is a requirement to maintain protection of EPHI.
So how many different times did they make a point of, oh, it's not a one and done exercise, periodic review and modification? I mean, it's remain vigilant. That was in one paragraph.
Yeah. So we're going to say it as many different ways we can figure it out that might hit some other part of the amygdala.
Amygdala. I like that. Yeah. So I think they're telling us enough. Again, you can go get this, see if now that we've given you that, look at it differently and read it, even if you read it before, look at it for these kinds of things and these kinds of points. And I think you'll see what we're saying about the importance of paying attention.
Yep. Yeah, you have to. I mean, somebody's paying attention to you. Maybe you should pay attention to some things as well.
Good point.
No doubt. No doubt. All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. And since there's no finish line in cybersecurity, we'll be here forever. And so will you. Until next time, for Don and myself, remember that HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.